set aside a certain amount of money to build houses for the poor Palestinian refugees in the camps to get them out of those terrible conditions. In the Arab nations at the General Assembly, not the Security Council, General Assembly, where they had the controlling influence, but had the General Assembly of the UN vote condemnation on the Israelis for moving these poor refugees out of these refugee camps that were terrible conditions into new housing. Why? Because they wanted these refugee camps as show places. And I could give you quotes from historians and from British officers who were really pro-Arab to show this despicable reason why the Arabs wanted these refugee camps as a showcase to the world. Oh, look how the Israelis are treating these poor Palestinians. All these poor Palestinians during that 19 years made no effort to develop the land. And then Israel got the land in 67.
Rick, we have another call.
Okay, well, hold on to that call for a minute. Let Ken finish this thought. Go ahead.
Who were these Jewish settlers? Well, they weren't farmers by nature, by trade. Probably some of them were teachers at one time before they moved to Israel. Doctors moved to Israel, and there was not enough work for so many doctors, so they did manual labor. Because they had the idea of Zionism. So these settlers devised ways that they could develop the land. They implemented hothouses. The Israeli Gaza settlers became the leaders in world agriculture, in organic farming, producing produce that was not affected by chemicals, fertilizers, and didn't have pesticides. So much were their organic farming produce in demand that in the last 3 years, the European Union required that all imports from Gaza be labeled Gaza, not Israel, and they would have to pay an additional import tax tariff. But the Europeans paid that extra price because the demand of Israeli produce was so great. And the Israelis developed this over a period of 10 years, and these farms just became so productive. Okay, let's get to what happened to them. Here we saw how the funds were raised by Jewish philanthropic.
Okay, actually, hold that because we want to get to that call.
Okay, we'll take the call. Welcome to Christian Questions. This is Jonathan and Rick. Who are we speaking with?
Good morning, it's Don.
Good morning, Don.
Who belongs in Gaza? The people who lived there before the 67 war.
Well, now, is it the people... Wait, Don, let me ask you a question. Is it people who lived there before the 67 war, or is it people who lived there back in the 1940s? Because there was two different groups of people.
The people who were there before the 67 war would include people in the 40s.
Okay.
The mischief of the 67 war should be undone, and the people who lived there and had property there should have that property restored to them.
The mischief of the 67 war?
Yeah. Israel's war of aggression against its neighbors.
Aggression?
I think so.
Huh.
And when will the public stop hearing this twaddle about the Israelis were the attacked ones in 67?
Because that's the truth.
Well, really? Menachem Begin says otherwise. He was quoted by Noam Chomsky in Chomsky's book, The Fateful Triangle, and Menachem Begin had this to say, quote, "In June 67, we again had a choice. The Egyptian army concentrations in the Sinai approaches do not prove that Nasser was really about to attack us. We must be honest with ourselves. We decided to attack him." Close quote. Menachem Begin, who I suppose would be in a good position to know.
Okay, and your point then is what? Israel is getting what they deserve because of what you're saying they did in 67?
No, because of what they did in 67, they got what they didn't deserve. They got the Gaza Strip, and they didn't deserve it. And they should get out. Lock, stock, and barrel.
So the fact that they were given it before then has nothing to do with anything?
Given it by whom? God?
Well, first of all, yeah, and foremost, yes. Go ahead, Ken.
Given by the League of Nations in 1921. The League of Nations said that the territory on both sides of the Jordan River, which included Gaza, would be given to Great Britain as a mandate to prepare for a Jewish state. This was the nations of the world. Now,
no, it was not.
Wait a while. You just let me finish this so we didn't interrupt you. The nations of the world had been extremely generous to the Arabs. The Arabs have received 22 independent states. They have received from the League of Nations and the UN territory that 5,400,000 square miles, and the Jews asked for less than 1%, and they ended up with, including the Gaza Strip, less than 1/4 of this 1%. So the Arabs have no problem. Now, who were the pre-1967 occupants of the Gaza Strip? Arabs, yes. They came from where? They fled before the 1948 War of Independence, because the Grand Mufti broadcast from Cairo, as we said before, that they should flee to leave the way open for the nations, armies of 6 Arab nations to just come and wipe the Jews out, push them into the sea, and then they could go back to the land afterwards. So it was these refugees that ended up in these refugee camps in Gaza. They weren't the original settlers in Gaza. They were refugees. Now, the Arab nations persecuted the Jews that were living in their territories at this time, so that 600,000 Jewish refugees fled the Arab states, just as Arabs fled Israel to escape the war, and then they were going to return afterwards. What did the Jews do with the 600,000 Jewish refugees? Did they say, okay, you Arab states, take them back now? You confiscated all their land, you murdered a lot of them, you persecuted? No. The Israeli infant state absorbed at great economic cost these 600,000 refugees from the Arab states. The Arab nations, with less than 1% of their annual Arab income, could easily have absorbed the Arab refugees in Gaza and in the West Bank, who some say numbered 600,000. Ben Gurion said, I have the exact figures, and they're 180,000. But it would have been easy for the Arab states to absorb them. These settlers, these inhabitants in Gaza, pre-67, were refugees that fled Israel proper because of the war.
All right, Don, any additional comments? Because we're approaching time for a break.